It's the SDG podcast. We're here with the podcasters. Say hello and introduce yourselves.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
Hello, I'm Chad Jetner.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. And today we're going to talk about disasters, fails, and other things like that, of that nature.
Product interfaces we don't like.
Yes.
Just kidding.
My first big fail in the IT world was when I was doing a conversion, an Office upgrade. Not a conversion. I was upgrading our Office version, and I had to, you couldn't just run an upgrade. You had to uninstall and reinstall. And during that process, I blew away somebody's PST file. I could not get it back. It was only the director of operations for a large retailer here in the Twin Cities.
Unfortunately, they'd only archived like 14 years worth of messages in their PST, right?
Nothing had ever been deleted.
How big was it?
90% of his work was in Outlook, was emailing back and forth.
Perfect.
And 2 months later, he thanked me.
That's right.
How big was the PST?
I don't recall.
Because if this was
file size, that's a pretty specific thing for me to remember from the year 2000, which was 21 years ago.
Yeah, even the year 2000
you,
though. A year 2000 PST file, if it's like 2 gigs, that is massive by year 2000 standards.
Oh, they wouldn't run if they were that big back then. Like, yeah. There was always that like I think there was like a 1.5 gig wall you'd hit, where if it was bigger than that, it would just corrupt. Like it couldn't handle that size, which is not the case now. But yeah, I don't even know if it was possible for him to have that volume of email or have used that much storage in, I think, the 4 or 5 years they were on, Windows.
Very large retailer in the Minneapolis area. It's hard to imagine who that might have been. But I do recall, I also have some experience with a very large retailer in the Minneapolis area. I can imagine.
I'll say large retailer, maybe not very large, because there's some very large retailers. A large retailer, not small, not a mom and pop shop type situation.
Okay. All right. Small enough to have Outlook PST files that are of a significant size for the year 2000.
Yeah.
And big enough to pay for IT support.
Big enough to be able to handle
100
Kyle Bacher page.
At that point,
Like,
about
right.
100 people at the corporate office and stores throughout the Midwest.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So Chad, were you telling us a failure, or were you trying to pin Kyle down on his retailer?
Mostly always trying to pin Kyle down. I mean,
Wow.
duh, right? Like, why wouldn't you?
It will never work.
I can talk about, so my biggest one, and this is actually a question that I ask in tech interviews. I ask people about, hey, tell me about one of your dumbest mistakes as an IT professional, right? Like, what is your capacity for screwing up? And I usually ask that so that we can talk about what is your capacity to learn. What did you learn from all of the other stuff, right? Like kind of a soft skill, softball question that gets people talking and loosens them up a lot. And I usually lead with my biggest, and this is the biggest one. I was setting up, and this is actually the company I left. We had our production environment, real client data, right? Like, it was a big deal. Client loved us. We were doing a release, and as part of the release, you build a startup company and you start on a shoestring budget, right?
Right.
So our production environment reflected that. But as we started to add clients, we're like, all right, we've got to make this like not shoestring anymore, right? Like, let's go Amex Black Card and not, not MasterCard. And so one of the things that we did was we created production read replicas for all of our production databases, right? Or I'm sorry, not read replicas, but the dual production
Load balance SQL Server with one read and one reporting side, right?
Yeah, but they were, and we used MySQL at the time. Actually, we still do. Or they still do.
Transactional and.
Yep. It was perfect. It was beautiful, and MySQL had beautiful solutions to these problems, right? So you have they called it the multi-master production environment. Read write on both of them. It has a transaction log that it exchanges between the two of them. So like when you set up one, and then you set up the other guy, and you're like, okay, that is your primary data source. That's what you should look like. Make yourself look like that out of the gate, right? Like
I'm just a simple caveman and not an actual programmer developer. But is that where you can roll back to a state in the log as sort of a backup?
Transactionality.
Yeah.
We didn't really use it in that way, right? Our transaction logs, well, there's multiple layers of that. And the database transaction log is really just when you have a clustered environment in the MySQL world, it helps the clusters stay in sync, right?
Okay.
Like it's like here's a series of commands that we did on ours, make sure yours blah blah blah. Like some of the databases and MySQL managed it in almost in that exact way. They didn't say make your bytecode look like this. They're like, here's the starting data point, and then here's all the instructions that we did on against our data set. And it just kind of synchronizes that across the board and makes sure that nobody overwrites the other. Well, when I did this the very first time, I pointed the actual production database at the other guy, right? And so we, in our application, had entity types that surfaced in the application that were almost literal representations of what you saw on the screen. So say we had an actor and a role and a movie and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I did it off hours. I did it like, 5 o'clock on a Friday. I'm like, all right, let's start this, right? All our customers are gone. We can start this thing. If anything bad happens, we can roll back. I started it. And then my buddy's sitting right next to me. He's in the production application. He's like, hey, that's weird. We don't have any actors anymore. And I'm like, that is weird. What did you guys do? Because, what
did you guys do?
Yeah. And then he's like, oh, weird. Baker's just went away, and now we don't have any cats. Alphabetically, things just started to disappear. And
none
once
of you went running to the cord to yank out the network connection between the two?
Yeah. And that's when after the third one, that's when I realized, because the first one I'm like, well, that's weird, but probably not my big deal.
Right.
Second one, I was like, I wonder if, and then by the time you say the third one, I'm like, oh, Jesus. And then, this is what I hate about wireless, because there's nothing to yank, right? Like everybody's wireless, and our database, this was Rackspace at the time. It was on Rackspace. And so like you can't, so it was really just a kill -9, right? I'd go out to the actual box. I'm like, kill everything.
Please stop.
And then I'm like, yeah, exactly. And I had that exact, and I managed to save it in time so that we didn't lose that much. And the application being relatively new at the time, the loss of data was relatively minimal. And thankfully, nightly backups, blah, 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 best practices, good practices, all of that stuff, we were able to pull back, and they only lost like a few records at the end of the day. Right.
Somebody had to type in some more stuff, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah. That feeling, though, like that feeling. Oh my God.
Oh, I felt that. Yeah. That is so horrible, because the time I deleted a production site collection, when I thought I was deleting a subsite that was within the site collection.
Isn't that just?
And then later that day,
it doesn't dawn on you right away. You hit the button, and you're like, "Oh, cool," and then you see something.
People start to complain, like, "What happened with this? We can't get here anymore." And then you realize what happened, and that there's no, at the time, there was no recycle bin for that. And
No.
your answer is to restore.
Right. It's all that's
And then
left.
you contact your hosting provider and you say, we need to restore. And they say, okay.
Restore
And then
from
they
what?
say, oh, it's not working. You didn't set it up right. And your
Those are my favorite.
backups that you've had going for the 2 years you've been paying us to back up your stuff, we don't have a good backup, period, because this was never right to begin with.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just that feeling just gets worse and worse. And
Yeah,
then
that's
you're
always a good lesson. Restore from your backups at least once just to see if you are making backups.
test. You got to test.
Testing.
You
It's
got to
hard.
do it. It
It's
is
hard.
hard because it takes time and you got other stuff to do. There's
There's-
things to watch on TV.
You guys are making me feel really good about my last
I almost
biggest
don't, I almost
memorable
don't even
one.
want to hear it, Lawrence. I
those
almost
are
don't-
the those are the two worst ones from my IT world.
So Kyle, did you ever recover? Was there lots of typing? Was there lots of everybody had to re-upload their stuff? Or
there
did you get
was
to start
there was a
fresh?
version of it. There was a copy of a older version of it that I was able to get. I
Did you
got it
recreate
mostly
2
back
years?
to what it was,
Well, of course.
and then had to do some changes and work with some people and go, okay, what was out here, what was there.
Did they thank you
Luckily,
afterward?
it was mostly pages of information and not like huge file repositories
Yeah.
and stuff. So and it wasn't really something they were using much anymore.
Right.
It wasn't like super important.
Wasn't there a whole intranet or something like that?
Yeah. So yeah, I got lucky.
I get nervous. Well, I used to get nervous. I don't get nervous anymore, but I used to have a role similar to yours, Kyle, where I was a consultant, but I was also like kind of responsible for office infrastructure, making sure like everything was just great, right? Back at a time when you used to have to manage servers and stuff instead of just buy an Office 365 account. But even back then, we still used like software as a service, right? We used to use this thing. I was at a place and we used this thing called eRooms. I don't know if anybody remembers eRooms. It was a lot like SharePoint is today,
Okay.
but like a 2002
Yeah.
version of SharePoint. It was awesome. Upload documents. Every project had its own space.
Yeah.
It was really, really slick software, especially for the year 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
But the upgrade process for that stuff used to be very similar to how you would upgrade desktop software, right? They're like, hey, we have a big new release, and it wasn't as slick as today where just everybody gets it. They'd be like,
Right.
if you want to upgrade your version, click here to download your data. Click here to re-upload your data. Then click here to blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that kind of a process. And I tried to do an upgrade when I was on the road for a client. I was actually I was in St. Louis. I think I was subcontracting for IBM at the time. And our consulting company was, we were like, hey, we're going to, let's upgrade really quick. I'm like, cool. So I get back from the client in the hotel, open my IBM ThinkPad, and like, all right, I'm going to log on. And then halfway through my internet connection died, right? And
back in the day
then,
when that happened. Yeah.
yeah, they weren't so eloquent with recovery procedures if you lose your internet connection. If you
Right.
had one of those things, it was just one of those, things where like, it's gone. Well, try again. Only it wasn't try again. It's like, oh, your data's in a weird state. You've got to
Right.
call us. And anytime I see, oh, you actually have to call us, I'm like, oh, it's the last thing I want to have to do is talk to a person.
Yeah, but they got to figure out if your tables are partially there, all the way there, which schema you're on, and all sorts of fun things like that.
Yeah.
So Peter,
Tell us yours.
I've
yeah.
I've only blown away like 600 crucial rows of data in production before. thankfully, it was only 4 hours to get the restore back from tape to then write the one quick query that restored all those 600 rows of data that had been mystically changed to, I don't know, taking a store offline or something like that. Like, it was just one of those brutal, like, oh, that was delete star, not delete
From
where clause that I really needed.
yeah. Yeah. I think those I don't know. I try to, like, okay, when I ask this question in an interview, I'm like, what did you learn from that? And the answer I don't like is, well, don't do that anymore. Right? The answer you're trying to look for is like, well, I'm going to have a fail safe, and I'm going to have a reviewer, and there's I probably should go through a change. And like, you put structure in place once you screw up really bad once. And I think every IT guy has to screw up really bad once. Like,
I don't know how you get away from not doing it once, at least. If you haven't done it once, it's just because you're not, like, it's coming, beware.
Especially when you're working in production and you don't really have a failover environment or a dev test and release. It was always very difficult and cost prohibitive.
Well, that's one of the big changes.
Yeah, to have that kind of redundant environment. I know with SharePoint, I don't think I ever worked in any place that had like dev test and release where you could just flip a switch and move something into production.
Right.
You could test it and like you had to use a special suite of tools to do that.
Or you test it in this site, which is really live, but nobody looks at, and then you move it over to the live production site.
And you're trying, you can move a content database or something like that over and back up a content database and stuff like that, which, you're pretty much, at that point you're working at the database level, especially with the older versions. Not all the tools were in place for that. They were all third party. And so when you did something, you were doing it for realsies. And also when you're working on someone's computer, working on their desktop, there's no like backup system of their desktop. You're
What's
working
the worst
on
news
their
you've had to deliver?
What's the what?
What's the worst news you've had to deliver? Like, somebody brings you their broken piece of garbage laptop that fell off their car or something like that. You have to
usually it's gone and we're not getting it back, or it's gone and I've got to take this drive over to Kroll On Track or whatever they're called now and have them do a low level like export. They're using tools that are reading from the platters on the drive, ones and zeros, and then trying to rebuild that data to get stuff back, which I've had to do.
Have you used a service like that?
Yeah, it's actually cheaper if you're an individual. At the time, it was like $500. You could get a recovery. If you were a business, they were like $2,000, but for the same thing.
Right.
They'd ask you that question early on. Is this for you or is this for your company? Yeah.
Well, it's my company computer, but it's for me because I'm the one that spilled coffee on it.
There used to be this magic number. $500 used to be this magic number of anything under $500 was doable. Anything over $500, like even when I used to sell websites and stuff like that, it's like if it costs more than $500, they were like, hang on here, hold your horses. Yeah. But
we're gonna think about that now.
Yeah, usually loss of something. I've had it where have been working with somebody where they screwed up. So at the same company, our parent company managed the infrastructure, and we were migrating from NDS, which is Novell Directory Services, over to Microsoft Active Directory.
Yeah.
which was also Novell directory. So I mean, well, that's debatable. It was it was really similar product, but they're moving to a Microsoft platform, and they had two network guys. There was the senior guy and the junior guy. And because we had to do it in the off hours, the senior guy wrote a big list of instructions and gave it to the junior guy, and then he decided not to follow them. And
Well, sometimes you just know better.
yeah. And so this is like, I think it was about 8:00 at night when he brought the new environment back up, and and all the accounts were gone. And they never got moved over. And then the other one had been shut down. And he shook his head and he said, well, I guess we're going to have to look at it in the morning. And I looked at him, I said, you're not leaving until this is fixed. Luckily, I'm a large man. And he was not. I said, we got 120 people coming in tomorrow morning at 8:00.
And as much fun as it is to sit,
to log in and get to work.
Right. What time did you finish?
It was about 6 a.m.
Yeah. Plenty of time.
And
Sun's barely up by then.
And so I just stayed at work, and then when everybody had gotten in, I think I left about 9 a.m. that day.
Yep.
Went home and went to bed. But I was up all night.
Those
and he
are
was
the
up
fun
all
ones.
night working on it. Yeah. That was really the only all-nighter I think I had to deal with.
Really?
Yeah.
How many all-nighters have you had, Chad?
I've had a handful. Not necessarily screw up related though. Just
Yeah.
Just kind of, I'm behind, and I am like, you get like especially when you're writing code or you're doing something. It's if you're in a groove, I just don't stop. And even to look at it, like if I glance at the clock, then I get tired, right? So
right.
I've actually probably had quite a few, but it doesn't feel like it, because at the end of the night you're like, holy crap, it's 4 a.m. It's whatever. I'm gonna take a little nap and wake up and get to work, right?
Yep.
Those, I haven't had any fear-induced all-nighters, right? Where like I had a timeline that I was working against and a thing that had to happen, or else bad things happen. Mine have always really just been, well, I'm in a groove. I'm not going to get out of it. I don't want to break it. I'm going to just plow ahead. I don't think I could do those as well anymore.
No.
Because I was able to, like, especially when I was a lot younger, right? Like 20 years ago, I would be able to pull an all-nighter, sleep for 3 hours, go to work, be fine, mostly.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If I did that today, it would not, you'd get a different version of me, right? Like I don't think, well, even working past like midnight, 1 a.m., right? Like even with my current client, I've stayed up till 11 o'clock working on something because I'm like, all right, same kind of idea. I've actually got peace and quiet after 5 p.m. with the client. Now I can actually do work without too many interruptions, and then work till whatever. But after a certain period of time, the quality just tanks, right? Like you can maintain a certain level of quality with a certain amount of hours,
right?
But
there's a diminishing return. You're getting, you can actually cost yourself more time by screwing things up.
Yeah, it's a special kind of person, and this is the gift that the youth of today have.
Right.
They might be able to do that and actually maintain a certain level of quality throughout the night.
Well, they have better energy drinks, I think, now.
I can't, those don't work on me anymore, right? Like I can drink coffee, but coffee is just a nice beverage. I'll try a Red Bull, but it kind of
never worked on me.
No, it just kind of, it wakes me up. And maybe this is an artifact of me being one of them youths that at the time, I don't think I mean, well, I don't want to say I'm older than Red Bull, but like in
You are,
those
though.
games, well, you don't have to twist the knife, Kyle. All right.
Well, I'm older
say-
than Red Bull.
Yeah,
I'm probably
saying-
older than you are.
Oh no, you're a kid. You're a baby. Saying
only
it out
look
loud
like it.
stinks.
It's because every time I get a wrinkle, I put on 5 more pounds and I push it out.
That's,
It's a new wrinkle reduction program.
It's
I
that's
haven't,
just how
I
I
haven't
roll.
seen that one online yet, but I like it. I bet
I
you could
did a
sell it.
35-hour weekend when the company I was at, we migrated from at gunpoint, because we had a parent company that had an IT department that was pretty dictatorial to all of the sub companies. And it was, we're migrating this weekend from 2003 Portal Services to Moss, which was SharePoint 2007. And that was the introduction of content types. In 2003, they had something called portal areas. And portal areas were converted to content types, but didn't really work. It really didn't convert. We had because we were the parent company of several other companies, and we had our company playbook where every single department had a chunk of it that they maintained, and it all rolled up into this master playbook that everybody used. All of the companies had to use. Like when we went through an acquisition, the first thing we did is ramp them up on our playbook. And that was sort of the source of truth. I had to completely rebuild it differently in the new system because it didn't really migrate. And I had to learn like how to use the new system at the same time. Like, okay, how am I going to do this? And how does this work now?
That sounds fun.
So it was pretty much all weekend with just a few breaks to get like sleep when I was exhausted.
You know what? So the last big all-nighter I did, and this wasn't necessarily an all-nighter, it was an all-weekend thing. Same small company that I left to come join SDG for. We lost a client. We were trimming costs, and this was 2014. Yeah, so this actually isn't that long ago, but I was still in my 30s. I was still a young man back then. We decided that we are going to, under the gun, switch from Rackspace hosting, which was really expensive, to AWS. And we had to do it in a weekend, right? And we had a certain amount of money left, and so we had to do it. There wasn't a client demand, there wasn't anything else. There was a checkbook demand, and if you didn't do it by this time, there's going to be negative numbers somewhere, and that's bad. And so I did that Friday through Sunday, everything, like the entire stack, which was not insignificant. It was a rough weekend, but it was a fun learning experience. No, I didn't really learn much from it.
Yeah.
Nice try.
Yeah. I'm trying to spin it somewhat positively, and I can't.
It was a
There's not-
requirement to get done.
Now
There was no
they're
alternative.
screwing up. They're screwing up, and then there's like making Herculean efforts to
Right.
keep people working. Like
Absolutely.
the Herculean efforts don't carry the emotional baggage and harsh feelings, and they usually supply a ample amount of motivation.
Yeah.
Like the kind of motivation that you have when you get up at 5 a.m. and you have to pack for a trip because your plane's leaving at 9.
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase it, right? And it's there's a different level of, like, if you screw up, that's a feeling in your gut and like a general uneasiness in your head, right? Your head gets cloudy, your gut stings, like everything hurts.
It is like getting an injection of something that just creates this flare up of pain.
Slowly comes over you as your realization of what you just did.
Because it's really what's happening is your brain is kicking out some pain juice to teach you a lesson.
I think for people that don't do IT, the best way to conceptualize this is if you're in a car, in that split second before you realize your car is going to be in an accident, right? Like when you see the accident in front of you, that feeling where your whole body kind of seizes, like you feel that, but for however long it takes you to solve the problem, or even not even to solve the problem, but to tell somebody else about the problem. That was the biggest for me.
Right. Sure.
That's funny because I've actually experienced that exact situation.
Yeah.
Where I saw the accident coming. I had time to warn the person. They didn't have time to understand the warning or what it meant, and they didn't see it coming. And they turned their head to look at me, and I had time to realize I should just kept my mouth shut. Because realizing that they might get hurt with their neck turned that way. And they did. And, but I held on for dear life to the steering wheel to the point where I bent it. Because I never let go. But that feeling, you're right, that, oh my gosh, what have I done?
And for me, for IT mishaps like that, it's not even the problem and thinking, okay, how am I going to get past this? It's, how am I going to tell this person, right? I have the most anxiety between the time the problem happens and the time that I have to tell the guy that's going to care the most about that problem, right?
Yeah, I'm not even worried about getting fired. Like, I expect that might happen, and I'm totally okay with it. It's the delivery of the news.
Exactly.
It's the disappointing somebody and causing them pain and suffering and the overhead of whatever loss they're experiencing.
That's the for me, that's the biggest, not even knowing, like, if I caused myself, a week's worth of work or, a couple of really late nights, I'm fine with the late nights.
Yeah.
I am at my worst when I'm in between problem and acknowledgement, right? Like that little, however long that is.
Yeah. If I can absorb the pain, it's not so bad. Like, this is only going to hurt me. This is causing me problems. I can do that all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I made someone else's lives suck because I screwed up, that's what I don't like.
Those are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's even hard when somebody brings you a problem and you 99% everything is gone.
Oh, like,
and I will try, but it's probably gone, and we'll try really hard.
Early sync issues between Office Online and the local copy, where all of a sudden something's just gone, or you worked in a page, like the caching issues and the timeouts and session timeouts, where I just spent an hour working on this page, hit save, and I got a blank screen back. And your heart just sinks for that person, because
by hour.
Yeah.
Like that's gone for good. That time's never coming back. And I don't know what to tell you. And now I've got to support a platform that people trust way less than they did yesterday.
The other side of this, Saul, though, is now that we're older and, we're in a position to have people report these problems to us. Right. And this is the thing that I didn't realize when I was younger, right? Other dudes have had, other people have had this exact same, like, this has happened to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. I'm talking to somebody in a leadership position that grew through the IT organization or any IT organization. That has happened to them. And so now I've had that happen to me a couple of times where folks have said, hey, I screwed up, I put in this code that's been slowly eroding our audit database, over the course of blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm like, and now I can hear that and say, oh, man, that sucks. But listen, we'll get through it. Like the ability to empathize with people bringing that to you is so much clearer or so much easier than if you hadn't actually experienced that.
Well,
and probably, I mean, that's just a general statement about anything, which is, you know, you can understand the context people are bringing to a problem or a conversation much better if you've actually been
Sure,
there.
but you remember the times when you were young and you're like, oh, how could that person let that stupid thing happen?
Right.
That's so dumb. I would never do that. And now you're like, oh, yeah.
Well, and you never extend yourself as much grace as you would someone else. When you screw up, you're thinking that it's the end of the world and you suck. But it's like, if someone else did that to you, you would be like, you know what? It'll be fine. We'll get through it. It'll be okay. We'll deal with it. I'm not going to kill you for it. I'm not going to fire you. I'm not going to beat you over the head. I'm not going to bring it up for the next 5 years. We're going to give you a pass this time. Stuff happens. And you're going to do that for other people, like, pretty frequently. But when you do it and you think of how, you don't give yourself that same kind of compassion. And I think that's unfortunate.
I think you learn to over time, but it's certainly not the starting point.
Passion, is that what that's called?
Compassion?
Self-compassion? I don't know.
It's something, self-care. It's something where you're like, we're a lot harder on ourselves than other, like we are on other people.
Or than others are on us, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah. Have you ever screwed up something and been yelled at and screamed at for it?
I will say no, right? But I have been. So I was at a local company, not through STG, through a different thing, and they hired. They hired me and two really close buddies. They hired the three of us to start an office for them in Bloomington. They're like, hey, our core development office is in this small town in South Minnesota, south of the cities, way south of the cities. We'd like to start an office in Bloomington so that we can attract, so that our talent pool is a little bigger. We're having trouble getting people here. And so we did that. We started it. We interviewed. We hired, 8 people. And then they're like, all right, here's the project we need from you guys. And we deliver, demos, right? Like bi-weekly demos. Okay, here's the progress we made, and here's the progress we made. And there was one senior guy, and this is when it clicked. I'm like, oh, this is why you're having trouble hiring people. He would see demos, and if he didn't see progress, he would yell, like actual yelling. And I've never been in a situation professionally, even back when I was a teenager, where I had anybody in a position of authority yell at me, and I'm like, this guy's. I was laughing, and he's like, why? What is so funny about this? I'm like, why are you yelling? Like, what is going on?
What do you think that's going to do, buddy?
Yeah. And you might, Peter, you've been here for a while. I was at this place with a former SDG guy, Dale Anderson. Yep. So me and Dale was one of the buddies. Me and Dale were at this place, and we're getting yelled at. And I'm looking at Dale, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I was chuckling, and the guy would just get even madder.
Right.
I'm like,
oh yeah.
And he's like, what is so funny? I'm like, well, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? I literally don't understand what you're doing. And why you're so mad. And he's like, well, you guys had 3 of you, 2 weeks. And this is what you did? And we built a foundation, and it was an iPad application. It was like everything that he asked for. I'm like,
right.
Yeah, that's great. I see this as an absolute win. Where is your head at? And it was so surreal. And then once he was yelling and screaming, and I just walked out, and I'm like, he's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm good. I'm done. I'll see you so long. I walked out of it. I just quit. I'm like, and I think our buddy Dale, I think, lasted another couple of months, and another guy lasted like 6 months after that, he stuck with it for some reason. But I'm
Yeah.
like, man, that is
He liked
so.
the yelling.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to know.
I just
But
don't think anybody should suffer that level of like abuse.
I don't think.
I've had-
No, I agree with you. But if you do, I think you should laugh at it for the hysterical moment
Right.
in time that you're a part of.
Yeah.
Right? Like I hope. I can imagine that if I was a much younger guy, and I was getting yelled at, I would feel tense. I would feel like it would actually.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be effective still, but like it would be a different experience for me. It would not be as hilarious as I found it. And I did
No.
it was, I mean, at that point in the career, and this is a point of privilege that I think we all have. We're at the point in our careers where we don't have to worry about if I walked away
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't got to worry about work tomorrow, right? Like I don't have to worry about much, right?
Yeah, there's enough opportunity out there where you feel fairly confident that you would find something
Yeah. Exactly.
relatively soon.
Yeah. And so it's easy for us to look at that and laugh and be like, whatever, buddy. I'm,
Yeah.
give them the salute and see you later. But I would imagine that a guy.
He never figured it out, did he?
No, he never did. That was his style.
He didn't know what things took. He didn't understand what it took to do what you were doing and how much time and effort, which I've seen that problem happen a number of times where what you see on the surface looks very simple. And so you don't like, why does this take 2 weeks? How is this expensive?
I think it was an even different problem. He had surrounded himself because this guy he had been in the IT industry for decades. And I think he had surrounded himself with people that actually listened to that type of thing and dealt with it, right? So he came up from the small town and there's not a lot of IT options for folks in Mankato, Minnesota, right?
Nope.
There's not a whole lot to do down there. There's a couple of companies. And so you come down there, if you're down there and that's your home base, that's where you're going to be, I can understand maybe taking a little bit more of this. But if you're up here in Minneapolis and you're screaming at your junior guys, you're not going to have a successful management career, I don't think. Or maybe you are, and I'm the oblivious one. I don't know. Who knows?
No.
But
When I was young, if that kind of thing happened, if I didn't like the way somebody was talking to me, it didn't matter if I had something lined up or not. And it was never going to happen again. Like I would just be done with it and walk out the door. It was you just wouldn't take it. But
It's interesting.
little corporal here.
I think now I would just kind of be like, confused or dumbfounded or just understanding that maybe the person is venting and not doing a very good job of it. Like I'm much more forgiving of humans being humans than I used to be. I understand that sometimes people can just blow their stack.
Sure.
But if they do it repeatedly, like you're saying, that's a different story.
I can understand people using language. Right now we're all remote. So like sometimes we'll hear things, and we talked about this yesterday, or I heard it talked about yesterday in the thing. But like you use language right now, and I can kind of tell based on personalities who's actually mad, like who's being terse and needlessly caustic, right, in a text message, and who's being just goofy and fake, whatever. But the language now, I can totally get behind somebody venting. I understand how cathartic that is for folks.
Yeah,
right.
And I can absorb a lot of that.
Sure.
Before I say, all right, listen, stop, right? You got to stop, right? So I'll take on a lot of this. It almost feels like emotional labor where you just absorb a lot of these feelings that people are having, let them get them out, and don't reflect it back to anybody. Just take it, let it happen.
Yeah, you take the hit.
Yeah, and then
I've certainly played the armchair psychologist or whatever, psychiatrist, let somebody vent to at a client before.
Yeah.
you know, and it gets it out of their system. And, you know,
You just
sometimes,
sit there and you nod
Yep.
and you empathize and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
This
is very challenging. And yep, you're right. This is
Yeah.
challenging.
But if your default state when things don't go your way is to scream, that's a different guy. Like that's a different person.
Yeah. You need help.
You need.
I'm kind of a problem solver. Like that's my mentality. So it's like usually when something happens that gets my hackles up, I just start asking questions and trying to understand like why it happened. I want to know, like, was this avoidable? Is this something that's going to happen enough to worry about in the future? That kind of thing. And
There's a great book out by this guy. His name's Mark Manson. And the book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving
a F. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I read that one.
Yeah. And then in the prefix that just says everything is effed.
Yeah.
So that book and the predecessor were great in. I wish everybody would just read that and be like, hey man, it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to not even be good, right? It's just okay. Who gives this is one of the most important aspects of what I do now in solution architecture is to not care as much about the things that you don't need to care about, right? Like conventions are great.
Sure.
If somebody has a really strong opinion, great. If it's different than mine, even better. Like, go ahead. I don't care. Right? Are we solving a problem? Are we doing the work? Is it meaningful?
Well, and occasionally I've let a coin decide, right? Like these are two equally powerful statements. Neither one of you has convinced the other one that we need to go that way.
Mm-hmm.
So let's let.
And that's
all right, we're doing that way.
I deal with people a lot, and sometimes they are making my life a little bit harder than it has to be. And
you're welcome, Kyle.
So, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, they won't ever know that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna take it. Sometimes if I'm in a bad mood, having a rough week or something, I never try to push back more than enough just to let them know that maybe next time they should let me know something a little bit sooner, or just understand what this means, what this meant, how this was 2 hours of my time that
your time sensitive demand,
or this put me in scramble and worry mode.
Yes.
How am I going to do this? How am I going to meet this need quickly?
Least favorite modes.
And so I don't mind a little bit of pushing back, but never past the point of correction, never past the point of getting my point across, and just awareness. It's like training a dog. When you start training a dog, you pick them up as a puppy and you hold them, and then when they start to wriggle and try to get down, you just apply a little bit of pressure, and you just do that to the point they stop, and then you release and you take them to the point of correction, you let go, and that's when they learn that, okay, this person's in control and I need to listen right now. And I try to do that with humans.
Just flick their ears or something?
No, I try not to because you don't want to just squeeze a puppy to death. I mean, that's not, and then you end up in a John Steinbeck novel, and that's not good.
That's not good. No.
Lenny!
But you don't want to you don't need to beat people over the head.
Yeah.
When they screw up, it's how much to correct and to try to avoid it, and make them aware of what it meant, but never beyond that, because anything beyond that is just piling on and kind of cruel.
Yeah, and they got to understand so that they don't keep doing it, right? Like
Yeah.
this,
And
your behavior is not correct. I will solve your problem this time, but let's try to figure out how to make it work easier next time.
right. And looking back at I have a pretty good memory. I don't remember how many gigabytes a specific PST was back in 2001, but I do know the name of the dog that they had when I was 5.
Yeah.
And I do know my code for video update on 101 in Deep Haven. Still, I still have that information in my head.
That's
And
right.
I still know the Sybase key from 2002.
Important things.
So I tend to hold on to things, and it took me a long time to learn to let go of stuff. I'll just keep bringing it up. I'll keep reliving it, keep beating up my head, and letting go of stuff that I had done or that somebody else had done, and not holding it over their head. But I think moving on. Have you seen Ted Lasso?
Oh my God, that's my favorite new show.
It's amazing. It's like the goldfish. What's the happiest creature in the world? It's a goldfish. Because their memory is lasts for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's not true, but it would be nice if it was.
But I mean, if you can just clean the slate and forget past wrongs that people have done, and you should remember though, things so you don't do it again. Hopefully you've learned, but
yeah. I mean, you learn a lot about people. Like, for example, we know Peter is horrible at scheduling meetings, right? Like, we just know. And so we know on Thursday, hey, Peter, are we doing a thing tomorrow? Because you said you were going to schedule it.
He's almost as bad at scheduling meetings as Chad is at selecting topics for podcasts.
On Tuesdays. Yeah,
on Tuesdays.
But we all know, okay, we're going to do, we kind of have a feel for everybody. We have a feel for the three of us at the very least. But you learn these things, you evolve them, and you know what you're dealing with, and it's actually, the faults become kind of adorable. I was a little disappointed that Peter actually scheduled the meeting. I was like,
right,
would have been more fun.
Yeah, I was like, let's keep this joke
it
alive. This is kind of, it's always happens.
Yeah,
we all know what time it is and that it's going to happen. Right. Yeah. It's just not on our calendar yet. So then it's the game of, when is he going to notice? And is it going to be at 11:30 or 12 or,
Exactly. And that is way more fun than the boring monotony of just having it be an expected thing. This is exciting. It's going to be 11:30, it's going to be 12:30.
I'm just going to start moving it around on the calendar, forward and backward across the lunch hour until we figure it out.
Is it going to be Thursday? Is it going to be Friday? How about we do a Saturday one? That'd be a little surprise.
There you go.
Are we going to have a topic?
Neither thing is as bad as me staying on top of editing stuff.
And when will the ladder go away? That's
when are we actually gonna it's gonna happen.
This was fun, Kyle. It evolved. I like it when they evolve. We always start with, okay, let's talk about a problem, and then I think you asked me, hey, did anybody ever yell at you for a problem? And I said, no, I've been yelled at. And then it evolved into, how do you handle people that are yellers or mean? Right. I like that.
Yeah. And you never hit anybody. Never throw a punch. That's key. I learned that early on. Just don't do it. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Get all your punching out when you're a kid. You'll get sued if you're an adult.
Yeah. Yelling as a response to yelling as far as that escalation should go. Then just walking away. That's what I would say. Sometimes you just got to walk away.
Walking away is always
sometimes you got to just pick up the dog.
What was the guy? What was the guy's name in Mad Max? Just walk away. The guy with the hockey mask and you don't know him.
Master Blaster.
That was the Tina Turner one. It was the second Mad Max movie, The Road Warrior.
Yeah, there was Master Blaster, had the little guy on the big guy's shoulders, kind of like Rocket and Groot kind of a situation.
Yep, that was Thunderdome. But
Oh
before
yeah,
Blaster, there was the Road Warrior, and his speech to the people in the little town was "Just walk away." And
yeah, I forget that guy's name.
I don't even know if he had a name. He was just the big guy in that one movie. But anyway, wow, big tangent.
Great movie.
Huge tangent.
Yeah.
Road Warrior was a great movie. I watched it about a month ago.
I sometimes fall asleep to the new one, Fury Road.
Just the gentle sound of Fury Road.
Yeah.
Lulls me to sleep.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. All right. Well, that was the SDG podcast. Thanks for listening. If you want to get a hold of us, drop us an email at thepodcasters@solutiondesign.com. Until next time, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.